scraps or anything? I mean, they eat their regular dog food, but how do we watch obesity in our dog? Do you see that a lot, or?
Absolutely. Obesity is probably the most common issue that we see in, our little dogs and cats and the big dogs especially. So it's definitely something that's out there, and I think it's something to be recognized as.
And it's something we need to watch, as we need to watch in humans, because it's not necessarily obesity that's so terrible. It's that the obesity leads to other things. So can dogs have diabetes?
Absolutely,
Can
dogs and
dogs
cats
have heart problems?
all the
they
time.
they can have the same problems that we can have. So what's your suggestion on is it just like with us? Do we need to exercise them regularly and watch what we feed them and watch any special
Definitely.
treats we can give them over other treats that?
Well, there are light treats made with light calories in there, but also one thing, so anything you give that your dog or cat, to them is a treat. It doesn't have to be these big milk bones and bones that we're buying for them. It can be, either a piece of their dog food, or it could be, my dog loves ice cubes, or it could be, special treats, green beans, celery. Those all have no calories in them, basically, and it's just fantastic to the pets. Usually they love them, so.
Never thought of celery. I'll have to try that. But
Yeah, they typically like the green beans a little better than the celery,
but
it's definitely something to try. Yeah,
and so just a small frozen green bean, and that's a treat to them. So.
Exactly. So I know to us it doesn't feel like much. It's just this little piece, but to them they're still getting a treat and they're still happy with it. So that exercise is important. It's a little more difficult in the summertime because of the heat out there, and we don't want to worry about overheating our pets. But, a lot of dogs love to swim too, so as long as you keep them cool and keep them wet, exercise outside is very important.
So our listeners know I spent 30 years in the law enforcement world. I was never a canine handler, but I worked around a lot of them. And so that we use, canines as tracking dogs and everything, to sniff out drugs, as, all sorts of different things. So I remember asking the question of some canine handlers and saying, how can your dog how can they sniff out drugs? And the simple way it was explained to me was that if I walk into the house and my wife's cooking a roast, I smell a roast cooking.
Mm-hmm.
But that the dog smells pepper, salt, beef. It smells all the different scents, and that, if you can train them to pick out the different scents, that's what they do. So having said that, do dogs are their taste buds the same way? Do they know what they're eating? Do they?
Oh, I would say so, but to our dogs, I think they have much less of it. Well, most dogs at least have much less of a pickiness with their taste buds to them.
Okay.
Food is food, and but to elaborate on what you said, I've heard a veterinary behavioralist even expand on that and say we walk into the room and we see, our primary sense that we use is our vision, and we see everything in the room, but some veterinarians believe that when dogs walk into the room, they actually smell, and they have this whole overwhelming sensation of all the smells in the room and what's here and what's there, and so it's kind of a cool way of looking at it.
All right, I have to back you up here. What is a veterinarian
Behavioralist? So, like we were talking for human medicine earlier, you have your foot doctors, your eye doctors, your gastro specialists. In veterinary medicine, it may surprise you, we have any specialist you have in human medicine, we have in veterinary medicine as well. So there are orthopedic surgeons, soft tissue surgeons. We have oncologists for cancer, cardiologists for heart. We've got internal medicine. It can go on and on and on. And there are specialists even at the Animal Hospital Woodstock, we have a Dr. Jo Randos, a theriogenologist. She's a specialist, and basically that's a fancy word for reproduction or breeding. So we work with breeders all over the world at our clinic. It's very interesting. And so there are also behaviorists as well.
So you guys are like the Mayo Clinic of...
I don't know if I would go that far, but we definitely have a variety of skill sets that you can access out there.
Okay. Fleas and ticks. 'Tis the season.
Mm-hmm.
What can we do about, first off, other than an annoyance? Well, I know ticks can be a lot worse than fleas, but other than an annoyance, is there anything? I mean, what can we do about it? Is it bad if my dog has fleas, other than the fact that it annoys them and it annoys me and it makes them scratch and itch?
Absolutely. So fleas are actually one of the most common causes of allergy flare-ups, like we were talking about earlier. And two, fleas actually carry other diseases and can lead to other diseases. So one, it can lead to the dog scratching and causing skin infections. Two, I've seen puppies actually come in so anemic because what fleas do is they suck the blood, they eat the blood, and puppies come in so anemic because these fleas or tick infestations take in so much blood that these puppies actually are collapsing. And then finally, fleas carry tapeworms. They carry tapeworm eggs.
That's great. I never knew any of that. I always thought fleas were just made you...
Yeah,
knock on wood, our dogs and cats have never had fleas, but I've seen other pets that do have them, and I know it's an annoyance, but I didn't realize that the flea itself... Now, I know ticks can carry, that different diseases.
Yeah, so there's a handful of tick-borne diseases out there. The most common one that we see here is the Lyme disease, which... especially being in northern Illinois and then the Wisconsin area is where that's one of the most prevalent areas for it. So that's another thing to watch out for, because Lyme disease is not something that can be cured. It's just something that can be managed if it does happen.
So what do I do for fleas and ticks, Doc?
Oh, there are millions and millions of products out there for preventatives, and most of them are very good. Again, I say most of them because, like you said, you've got your pet aisle at the local grocery store or Farm and Fleet or wherever it is that you shop, and there's a lot of flea and tick products out there that we have people come in all the time and say, I've been using this from the store, and it's not, my dog still has fleas or my dog still has ticks. So I really think that the products you get from the veterinarian, which there are topicals and there's pills, and I think those are the best ones for fighting flea and ticks.
So going way back, as I like to do, 30-some years ago, I remember we got, what the big thing was a flea collar.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember them having any goop or anything that you put on. I think it was just, come summertime, we got our dog a flea collar. And that seemed to work. It was just a collar you put around them that was plastic. And, they never got fleas, so I guess it worked. And then now we've morphed into modern day to where you say there's all these things, and it goes back to, it's like going down the cold aisle for adults. Which one works, which doesn't work. I know for our pets, we used, I think it's called Frontline for a long time, up until this year, and that was, I didn't mind using it. It worked, but it was like a goop you put on their back. And one of the dogs, it didn't bother her at all. The other one would roll around and go crazy, and then you wondered if it even worked or not, So this year we went to there's like a pill form of it, which I have to tell you, as far as the handler goes, I much prefer the pill as having to put the goop on. Is one better than the other, or? So
they both, as far as their how well they both work very well. So it's really just owner or handler preference on which one they prefer. So the reason we kind of moved away from flea collars is because dogs and even children would go and touch it and get it in their mouth, and some of those could have actually been toxic at the time and caused depression. But these topicals that we have now, and then the pills, we don't see that in. And so really it's up to you. If you don't mind putting the topical on their back and your dog doesn't mind it at all, then sure, that works just fine. But the pill works just as well, and it is a little less messy too. So that's the next guard I think you're referring to.
So here's a question. Do these, whether it's topical or you take it, through a pill form or whatever brand you happen to take, are they like a repellent, or are they? Because I've found, I live out in the country, and my wife and I have, not a lot, but we've found ticks on the dogs before, and they're starting to burrow in, and so then you wonder. So is it more of a, like I say, there's a difference, what I just explained, right? There's a repellent, and then there's something that's, more of, if they do get on you, they're not going to do any damage. So
well, there's both, and I'd have to go through the list of hundreds of medications, but there are repellents that just keep them from attaching, and there are other drugs that kill them off once they do. So, ticks, we're sort of being more specific on them right now. There's some medications where it kills the tick once it attaches, because the tick has to be attached for a certain period of time before it can actually transmit the disease.
Okay.
So what it does is it will kill, the tick will bite, take a suck of blood, and then within a couple hours the medication will take effect and kill the tick off then. So that's a different approach, and again, there's repellents as well. So it's really, weighing the pluses and minuses of the different medications.
Are all ticks disease-carrying ticks?
No.
So if I find a tick on my dog or cat, I don't necessarily have to go crazy thinking that my dog has Lyme's disease.
Right. And actually...
But the other side of it is I shouldn't just brush it off like, oh, it's a tick.
Mm-hmm.
So what should I do?
Well, so really what I would recommend is, one, you can vaccinate for Lyme disease. If you're really concerned, or if you're in a high wooded or a high brush area where you're seeing a lot of ticks, you can vaccinate for that. So even if you're using the preventative but you find a tick on your dog, what do I do now? Well, if they're vaccinated, it sort of relieves you of that fear or anxiety of the Lyme disease.
You know, I'd never heard of that before. I'm going to have to go home. If Tony, my wife, is listening, I'm sure she is. We need to check our records because I don't remember if we get, because we live in a tick area. I know we use the preventative, but I don't know if we get our dogs immunized for ticks.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll have to discuss that later, Dr. Dustin and
absolutely,
and Tony. But so that's one of the things. So what else should they do?
Well, one thing, when you remove a tick, you have to be sure that you're removing the head and the body, because a lot of times what we see is we'll have somebody come in and say, oh, there was a tick here a week ago, but I removed it, and we look and there's this big sore there, and it's because the head gets pulled off of the body and can actually regrow and survive that way. So it can still do the damage. So it's important, if you're not confident that you can get the whole thing off, the head out as well, I would take them into your vet and have them remove it, because removing them in a timely fashion is the next most important thing. The ticks that carry Lyme disease are actually usually too small to see with your eyes. So a lot of these ticks that we see, they can carry other tick-borne diseases, but usually the Lyme is carried by a very small little tick that is about the size of a tip of a pencil. So
wow, very small.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
So I guess some good advice would be, regardless of what preventative I'm using, a flea collar, a pill, a goop, whatever you're deciding to use, we should still inspect our pets periodically, especially if they're out rolling around in the grass and you live in an area that you know is that supports ticks and fleas or other.
Definitely.
Animals. Those are the two main ones, and just once in a while comb through their hair and look and check them out.
Yep.
And see if you happen to find. Now you don't have to do it every day or whatever, but you need to, pay attention to your pets and see what's going on. So some good advice there. All right, next on my list, I don't even know if I'm going to pronounce this right.
Gastroenteritis.
Yeah, that's the one. Gastroenteritis. What is gastroenteritis?
Well, that's a big fancy word that pretty much encompasses all GI diseases or stomach and intestine diseases. So we see a lot of diarrhea cases during the summer, and that's for a whole bunch of different reasons.
I was going to say, why? Just the summer, or?
Well, we can see them year-round, but it's more common in the summer. One, because that's when we see a lot of the intestinal parasites come around. The hookworm, roundworm, whipworm, tapeworm. And that's because the vectors or whatever other things transmit these parasites are around, and your dogs are outside, more common in the summer, and so they're exposed to a lot more. So it's important to have, annually, we recommend to have dogs and cats drop off a poop sample to their veterinarian and check and see if they've picked any of this up. Now, parasites are just one of the things. Also, summertime is a lot more common with all the barbecues and 4th of July parties, Memorial Day parties. Dogs can get into a lot of trash and food that they shouldn't be getting into, and that can cause some upsets of the stomach, and it can cause, anything just from a simple little diarrhea case because they ate something fatty, but it can even lead to pancreatitis, which is a very serious issue, which is why we recommend keeping our pets away from the high amounts of those fatty foods.
So basically we need to watch their stool.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that's one thing, people come in, they say, I see that the dog's looking a little skinny or a little anemic, its gums are pale, and people say, well, I haven't noticed anything different, and I just honestly say, well, have you been watching them poop? And they go, no, I just throw them in the backyard, and that's understandable. That's what I do with my dog too, so it can go unnoticed until they start having accidents in the house. So yeah, it's a good idea to, as gross as it sounds, keep an eye on your pet's poop.
Check it out, just like you should do your own, but that's a whole other show.
I won't cover that.
We won't cover that one. So let's see, what else can we go? Okay, here we have someone asked a question earlier today to me. Said to ask you, what about? So we've been talking a lot about dogs and cats, which are the main. Well, I would say the main pets that probably people deal with. But what about? I mean, we are out here in the country. This is horse country. Do you guys deal with horses and large pets?
So at the animal
or is that another specialty?
Yeah.